if you have an organization that's able to develop and self-improve the company and all its different products, then it actually has capability to spin up an infinite number of zero-man organizations and products. I want them to experience what it's like to have AI as a collaborator on the same level as the human. Not as an assistant, not as a tool, as a collaborator.
A human communicating to human is one type of communication. A human communicating to an AI is one type of communication.
We ask questions and we get answers back. That's like level 1, as I say.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Co-Creating with AI. This is our journey exploring and understanding the fast-moving world of AI. I'm Martin, and with me is Rasmus, and today we have a great guest, Elia Merling from SWAVA. But first off, Rasmus, how are you today?
Pretty good. Yeah. Looked like a shitty day this morning, but now it's like sun and what do you call it? Mirror. Like the lake outside is a mirror. So I've got a
Thank
good
you for that.
view when I'm not looking at you guys, of course. But yeah.
I'm good as well. I had a
How are you,
really
man?
soft morning coffee and catching up on AI news and stuff, and also keen into following Bitcoin as well because it's due for an uptake now in October coming up. And how about you, Elia? How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. I'm happy to be on the show. I think I'm one of your most loyal listeners. I've listened, I think, to all episodes since you came out. And interesting fact, I don't know if you know that, Rasmus, but I was the number 2 in the world to test out the multiply software.
Oh,
When,
really?
when Martin gave me a login, he said, "There's a guy in Africa, and now it's you." He said,
That's cool. Okay, so both that and listen to every episode, even like our start more philosophical,
"Yeah,
no concrete point, kind of me and Martin, basically having what could have been a late night, discussion. Cool. I
yeah,
mean, really happy to have you here, Elia. And I mean,
yeah."
maybe
Thank you.
start off like what's your? I mean, I know you and Martin know each other from way back, but maybe just a short intro on what you've been up to in your life and what you're doing now.
For sure, for sure. Before we dive into that, I just want to say, that I just thought about, why I like your podcast so much, and I've recently told Martin that the best episodes are when they bring in guests, but I've kind of like started to revise that opinion now because I thought, your last episode on O1 was really good, and that made me rethink, because what I like about the podcast is that it's a mixture of your personal opinions and also facts, and that strikes a really nice balance. But I realized listening to that episode that what you do very well is that you kind of like take the listener on a journey where you get to challenge yourself and expand your own thinking. So I think you guys are on an interesting trajectory, and maybe you don't need the guests so much. And I think it's because you kind of like you have evolved and learned so much about this that it's starting to get really interesting.
Awesome. Thank you, Elia. And
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
yeah, and bringing you on as a guest is also part of our learning curve and accelerating it. So thank you for
Yeah.
coming on. So your
Right. So
your company Svava, you deal in you do you create AI coworkers for the enterprise, right?
yeah, correct. And I started working on that in October 2023. And I have a vision for the company, which I find is very interesting and challenging for myself. And it gets me out of the bed every morning. And it's kind of like the idea to have a one man company and to become the world's first unicorn one man company, but also have a vast amount of AI colleagues and then work together with amazing human partners when we need boots on the ground. And through that, be able to create immense value. So I thought that's quite interesting to have a one man company that can create, unicorn value with AI coworkers. But also, I found that why not take it one step further? Because if you have an organization that's able to develop and self-improve the company and all its different products, then it actually has the capability to spin up an infinite number of zero-man organizations and products. And when people listen to this, they will think that's a very unhuman-centric proposition, but I think it's really the contrary because of the immense value that it will be able to unlock for
Mm.
people that do not have the same conditions and opportunities as we have, whether that's through education or just being in a less fortunate environment, but you have an entrepreneurial idea. I think it's really interesting. And if I'm able uh, to fulfill the vision of manning the company with all of these colleagues with every facet that you would find in a company, whether that's marketing, sales, and so on, then I can also help my customers, because my customers are mid and large size companies. But I know that I'm able to do it, and I can help them with
Mm.
any different facet that they want to bring in AI colleagues into. And to get to your second question there about my background and how I stumbled into this, um, I see, that why did I start on this? I was born and raised in Alexandria, Egypt, and moved to Stockholm when I was 13. And I've always been in kind of like, multinational, multicultural environments. And I've learned to travel between the cultures and also see how, what both are possibilities of having a cultural framework, but also what the constraints are. So sometimes, you hear people talk about herd mentality. I've learned how to travel between different herds. And that brings on to the next experience that I have, that I started a company, an agency, 99 in the internet boom that's still around today and has evolved into Kid Collective today. It's Sweden's largest independent agency today. And I left that agency in 2006 when social media started booming. And the reason I did that was to go on a journey and kind of like explore tribal marketing and challenging the idea of segmenting
Mm.
individuals using demographic variables, but rather looking at them as a whole, as a tribe. So I developed models for mapping out tribes. And that later became published in Pearson's Marketing Bible. And then the third data point, the last one I will share at the background and why I arrived at this with coworkers is I started coding when I was 9, and really early I was really fascinated with multiplayer games. So I started developing graphical multiplayer online games long before World of Warcraft. Like there was a homepage, it listed 5 projects, and this was
Mm.
one of them. And I did that for 10 years. So as you see, it's always been a pattern of going from the singular to the multi. So in October, I had that idea of, hey, AI coworkers, like it was an amazing idea I had. I couldn't even sleep. So I put together this demo that I posted on LinkedIn in October last year, where I had a demo showing how I had AI colleagues. I was talking to them. They were popping up on the screen. I was giving them tasks. They were running off and doing things. And then one of a friend of mine and also a consultant firm called Criarum here in Linköping, they reached out and said, hey, these AI colleagues, can they come and show up at our conference, and can't they be participants? And I thought that was like a crazy idea. So I said yes. And then I realized that it was the most stupid decision I made. So I tried to wiggle my way out of that, where they say then no, you can't back out now because they're coming from Stockholm and Gothenburg and everywhere to be part of this conference. So I had to put together a product that with established company. We have Saab there, we have Toyota there, we have amazing companies coming to this conference, and they're going to experience this AI coworker idea, which is just a LinkedIn prototype. In 2 weeks I put together something that was functional, that actually they could work with in workshop and try AI collaboration. And what was interesting with that I found is that there are 4 levels of agentic systems. One is the level
Mhm.
that ChatGPT is mostly at, and most uses is reactive level. And then there's autonomous level. And then there is multi-agent level, where these actually collaborate. And then the fourth level is adaptive learning. And what I realized now looking back is I jumped to the fourth level. Because in October, what I showed in the demo there in the first version of the product was an autonomous team of agents working together and having the
Mm.
initiative of being an innovation leader and doing an innovation project. So they, because this kind of like been my driving force, has been 2 questions. One is, what can AI do? And the second is, what do I want to do? But I can't answer the
Mm.
question of what I want to do unless I know what AI is capable of. So that's kind of like why we're here today, and why I think I'm well suited to tackle this specific problem.
Can I just double click there on a couple of things? Like just first of all, like what so that conference, in what way did AI agents participate? Was it like it was an offline conference? And how were they involved, like concretely? Like, can you give an example?
Yeah. So there were actually 2 different levels of that project. One was one which I designed so that they would actually have AI as a coach. and AI would coach them, in an ideation process so that they would actually get experience. And my idea there was, I want them to experience what it's like to have AI as a collaborator on the same level as the human. That was my idea. Not as an assistant, not as a tool, as a collaborator. And so that was one part of the experience. And then the second part, after they had experienced that, because kind of like think of this, I was thinking of this like a learning journey. First, they have to experience that. And then I kind of like pulled away the curtain. I said, okay, now you've been on this ideation process using AI, and here is a team of AI co-workers. They had different roles, and we gave them different goals, and they started, just working. They went from insight to idea. They started even prototyping. This was October 2023, and for them, the people that were in this conference, it was just completely mind blowing. People were like, we saw the future. um, and what was interesting then is, you've seen this progression yourself. Like one pivotal moment in the development, I think, of this in the general community was when Andrew Ning held a talk on agentic systems at Sequoia Capital in March 2024. When I saw that, I was okay. Now it's going to happen. You're like, now, this is gonna take off. Like it's going to take off. But I've been working on this in 6 months, and it's exactly what he's talking about, how we can bring GPT-4 up to the level of what was anticipated to be Strawberry then using agentic systems. And it has taken off. Like it's like 2024 is the year of agentic agents, people say. I'm just happy I was early on the ball, and been learning. I've just been learning. And it's two parts learning, right? As you guys probably recognize as well. One is the technology side, and the other is, how do we get this in the hands of people so that they, or enterprises, that actually can use it.
Awesome. So, when you were at that conference, blowing the minds of people, like what were the spin-offs from that? Like, what have you been working on since then? What and what impulses like have been the most providing the strongest directions for you?
Yeah. It's one is kind of like realizing that in hindsight, because it wasn't one of these, strategic moves, is what a really interesting way to build a product where you have so qualified people that are so great in their occupation and work that get to test your early demo and give you feedback. And then we've repeated, that conference format 3 times so that the product is constantly developing. And some of the first customers are actually some of the first, prototype testers. So, but if we just take a couple of learnings through that, one is kind of like the framework I developed, where I see, you can see that clearly in the product, but you also see that this is probably a maturity of how we will collaborate with AI. One is AI as assistants, and using it basically we ask questions and we get answers back. That's like level one, as I see it. Level two, that's the level that I mentioned we had. There was coaching. We reverse the roles. It's not us asking AI questions. AI is asking us questions, and we get an opportunity to develop as humans instead. And the third level is, this autonomous level of actually doing workflows and getting help with that. But all of this would not have been possible without the process that I described. And two learnings that I found there is, one is that when we made AI too prominent
The
within
humans became
these
passive.
creative
Yeah.
processes, then many became passive. Yeah, they stepped back, and they took a step back. And one is probably because, what
Yeah.
happens if you have someone at the table that's read the entire internet?
Mm.
Like, what does that do with you? And you're not used to, how should I interact with this?
Mm.
Now we talk about, maybe it's not us versus them, right? Maybe it's AI together with us humans. And now we're getting to that point, and maybe that is the most interesting thing. But that was one learning, is, in the product, how
Yeah.
to introduce AI in a way
I,
that humans do not lose their agency, and do not become passive. So even if we have all this opportunity, how do you introduce it and when?
I realized that with kindship as well, when I worked on voice, that if as soon as you um, allow an AI to start talking, the first thing you have to teach it is how to also shut up and let the human speak.
Yeah.
Uh, and but you said there were two major learnings. What's the second one?
But if we just first unpack that a bit, because I really liked I think it was 2 episodes ago, you just talked about that, how you went to a conference in San Francisco, Martin, and then you kind of
Yeah,
like thought, well, it's over basically. They're all
nothing
doing
is
it,
happening.
and
Yeah,
then you
exactly.
several months pass, and then you realize that it wasn't the case. Yeah, I thought that was really funny, and actually, just that story is something that I also realized.
Mm,
I chose a different route because I started as well with voice when I was bringing in these AI as colleagues, and then it wasn't good enough. It was never good enough, especially when it came to Swedish
yeah.
interaction and voice. It was never good enough. So I
Mm,
instead then I put it to the side and started focusing on other bits. But anyways, the second um, uh, learning that we had there, besides that people get passive when they're in there, is kind of like that's become even more and more clear to me is that AI coworkers slash agents, they can process much more information and they may even thrive when there is more information. But when you're building a user interface and experience for humans, they will very
mm,
easily be overwhelmed by the amount of text. So more and more I come to realize that has to be one protocol of communication for humans and another one when AI coworkers are working together and communicating. So basically, if one coworker is talking to another AI coworker, we will actually condense that so that when we present it in the interface, it's a condensation
yeah.
of there's an information loss or there is actually just an increased density in that information. And that's something I come to realize more and more is if you want to build out the system that enhances human AI collaboration, then what we've had so far as a model, I think most
Mm,
applications use the chat history is the memory of the conversation. It's also what's informing the prompt going forward. But if you want to maximize this, then that's not the way to go.
mm,
Let the humans have their chat history. Let the AI coworkers have theirs. That's
I,
another insight that's become
I
clear.
think that's a really like interesting point, like that refers a little bit back to what we spoke about last week, Martin, which is that I mean this is a bit of a like a human communicating to human is one type of communication. A
yeah.
human communicating to an AI is one type of communication that we now need to learn. And then, as product builders, um, who are betting on
Mm,
agents, which I'd say most serious AI companies are now, we need to also really take into account uh, like how AI should communicate with each other. There's actually like
no, I
a
didn't.
there's a
No.
sci-fi
Mm,
book. Did any of you guys read the Long Earth series? No, okay, it's actually really good, but I'll just condense it. Basically, in that one, at some point, like you have a new
okay.
type of humans emerging that are just have like vastly more complex brains, and then they start speaking with each other in something called hyperbabble, which basically, when you
Mm,
analyze it, just contains a lot more information in the same amount of time, which is, of course, what a machine can do. Like when like two machines communicate, and I really think that's like I really think that's like a key insight, like an important
mm,
insight that we need to optimize for those like separately. Like, do you have any like concrete learnings there? Like apart from, that the AIs can handle all the information and the humans cannot. Like, is there
Mm.
anything else like in terms of like improving the agent-to-agent communication or collaboration there?
Yeah, there are several things I come to think about. Like it wasn't so long ago,
mm,
we really had to optimize for the context window. Like that was really a thing. It was like, how do I fit this long process that we're having here with this AI human collaboration, but it's gonna has to be concise, in fit into the context window. And even if it's still a problem with a needle in a haystack, which means that information in the middle tends to get lost, then it's not as big as a problem. Like these things are getting solved, I feel. So uh, while before we had to optimize this for agents as well because the context there was only so and so big, that's gone away. So what I've come to realize there is I can kind of think of these models
mm,
almost within a quadrant, and one is time, and the others is quality. So you basically, when I'm thinking of the different types of models that I will use within the software I'm building, I'm thinking about that, what is appropriate for this particular task. So O1
Mm.
is example of a model there that is takes it takes some time, but it will bring out a very high quality for these kind of reasoning tasks. But then there are times where you just want a really quick summary of what's going on. For example, in a
Mm.
voice chat setting, and there you need something that's hyper fast, and you can sacrifice a bit of quality. So to really answer that question, the learnings about all the modality of all this, I think it gets a bit more complex. We have to think about the context window all the time. Think about the context window. What's in there? Is it relevant? Is it too
Mm.
much as such? But also, what are the models that's actually going to be crunching this? And I kind of like seen two trends, and curious to get your input on that as well. Is I see people, that really go all in on having these agents basically,
Mm.
just give them a goal and off they run, and we hope they get there. Like that's kind of like one, I would say, ideal that a lot of programmers have. And the other is the opposite of that, is where you have very much guardrails and you have a very clear, defined process. Here are the files, here's the prompt,
Mm.
and you can get a more, I would say, deterministic outcome using a framework like that. And I think kind of like what I found is, is what's most interesting is in the middle. And what I found also is, um, there's so much going on, where people are trying different tools and framework and saying how amazing it is, but it's not really for a production setting in an enterprise. So there, for example, if you take a tool like you mentioned before, one of your episodes, Crew AI, and we put that into a production setting and say, here is the goal, Mr. Agentic Framework, figure it out. There's so many times where it will just waste lots of resources, probably. So from
Mm.
sustainability point, just energy inefficient. Many times that's looping around. Like this is not serious. You can't use it, in that way. We're not there yet. Even with O1, I would say we're not there yet. So that's is kind of interesting in general, speaking of these kind of putting agentic frameworks into real application use with enterprises. The answer is probably somewhere in between these, but these kind of like ways of thinking.
Rasmus, isn't that striking that balance between the deterministic workflows and an agentic open-ended workflow also exactly what you're working on at Multiply, like finding that balance?
Yeah, I mean, sure. And I think just like to just like yeah to sort of expand on that, like in my view, like I agree that automating, like most of the work that humans do can't be fully automated, but it can be vastly accelerated by having agentic systems that collaborate like iteratively with someone. And especially like if you actually give the systems the data they need, like the agentic systems, and the processes that are proven to achieve the result that the enterprise wants, right? That's why you have processes. Like you figure out, right, you can make something happen this way, and then you make a process out of it because sometimes that person leads, right? And you need to have a new person coming in and do those processes. And I mean, all SaaS
Mm.
tools are basically just like ways of implementing processes in one way or another, right?
Mm.
So I think that's at least that's our bet, and I've said that many times on like how you roll this out is by being very specific, keeping the human in the loop, mostly, because also then you can have this like you can have course correction, like so the
Mm.
agentic system doesn't just go off here and like veers off into the right into some crazy tangent. It actually like goes here and then you're like, oh, that's good, but steer back, and then it goes here and then you can steer back, then you get massive acceleration of what I could do as a person. uh, so I agree that can we go into like can you share any like concrete like use case or application that SWAVA is used for in the enterprise today, like without, of course, mentioning anything confidential? Like, is there anything we could double click on just to expand a little bit, understand how you approach it?
Yeah. So the system is constantly evolving with the capabilities, and I feel like I've um, the platform itself has been banging its head against the wall at what is it possible to do, really, and then
Mm.
O1 comes and you realize, well, I can just drop this in here, we can get a better planning, for example, because um, the one the if we look at the three levels that I talked about, because that's one way that we break apart what is able to do. using SWAVA and human AI collaboration. If we just look at the level number one, which is just basically having an assistant, is the power of being able to create any coworker you want. You can just define the role, and then you can give it access to documents. It has access to several different tools. It can browse the internet. So we can connect it to APIs. Through that, you can really get just a lot of help. And some people use that just for legal work, for example. Or it could be the interface to one of our systems. So we'll talk to that coworker when we want to, get something out of Fort Knox, for example,
Mm.
or some other API it's interface. So that would say examples of using as assistants. Second level, interacting, collaborating with AI as a coach, using it specifically within workshops, for example, for ideation, and having basically AI as a facilitator and helping me to challenge. And if you don't have a lot of workshop colleagues, you could actually get a lot of out of it just doing it one on one. Or I see some of our customers using this as a preparation for a workshop that they will have, with just human participants. So that's example then of using
And
AI
can I
as
just ask,
coaching.
like, how do
Yeah,
you implement that? Is that like, do you do it based by text, or do you bring people like meeting bots into online meetings, or like how have you how are you like providing and trying to provide that today? And do you have any learnings on like, because I think that's very interesting, just getting to the equal level of like, hey, we are doing a workshop and the AI can be proactive. Like we've talked about this a bunch, Martin, previously, but like it's I'm just curious if you've had any like, and I understand you're early in your product journey. I'm just like
yeah.
looking for learnings basically and like
Mm.
examples.
I built a prototype where the coworkers can join into a GoTo or even a Teams or a Google Meet. They have the same challenges that you guys mentioned before, is getting them to talk in turn and not being so wordy all the time. So that one of what I got so far in that prototype, that I started to find some solutions to that. And also, but
Mm.
it's still not at the level where I would feel comfortable that one of my customers yet would use it, but we're getting there. Then we have another facet that's also at prototype stage, where we bring AI into any physical setting and basically use the microphone on your phone, right? So that it's very easy to bring in, and you could just put it on the table, right? And it interacts that way. We're mostly using it today is just at a computer screen in a browser kind of experience. And that has many challenges and many flaws, because as soon as you bring into a computer, into like a human workshop environment, then you kill the vibe and the dynamic immediately. So what I like to what I see works best in that case is that you don't disrupt the human interaction and engagement that you get in a workshop,
Mm.
but rather you plan for when you will bring in AI in that case. So it's kind of like navigating the constraints of having a computer that we will actually workshop if you want with post-its and all of that, and then we can bring it in at various checkpoints along the process to get this input, maybe challenge us, help us refine our questions, maybe also complement our ideas or challenge our ideas. But we want to get to the point that I think you're aiming at there, Rasmus, and that I think we all dream about, is having a partner which is completely integrated and feels completely natural. And that's what I mean when I say we're banging our head against the wall, because just the last
Mm.
few weeks there
Mm.
are so many amazing advances when it comes to AI and voice, right? That's where we are now, like. So we can start to see that some of the challenges we've had, they're starting to find solutions there.
What's your
um,
view there, Martin? Like, 'cause I feel like
Mm.
a lot of the analysis that you've had since last year when you've been working on like the earlier version of Kindship with like making it building a capability for AI to participate
Yeah.
via voice in a multiplayer human slash AI setting, right? Like that, because it just seems like it can be applied so broadly. Then, if you just get it, whether that's a physical live space, or it's a online space. Like, do you have any view there with the current kind of state of the market and like what we're talking about?
Yeah. There, in my view, there's still no product that can do that. Especially if an AI talking to a group of people is such a for the AI such a chaotic environment to be in, that there's no product that even comes close, or even have launched. There's no company that have launched a product with that promise, because it's such a hard problem to solve. And there's you both have to recognize different voices, so you can discern like like how many people are in the room and which one is taking turn at each moment. But also just as you mentioned, Elia, like when does the AI take their turn? When is it relevant for the AI to speak up? And how do you do that? How do you get your foot into a live and a lively ongoing conversation without just rudely stomping over everyone else? And there's so many subtle human social protocols in play in just any conversation or group meeting that and where there's also like a multitude of protocols, whether there's a facilitator, is there a leader, are there some people are expert and some are there to learn, like, and to pick up on all of those social cues is such an immense amount of work. So that's why what we see now is one-to-one voice, and I think that's going to be the focus for all voice companies for the next at least 6 to 12 months before we start to see actual products with working with groups.
What comes to me, like what comes to me there though, and I'm not sure, like this is probably really hard as well, is like I
Mm,
just imagine like the live workshop or the video, like the
mm,
Google Meet. If you give if the AI has both voice and vision,
yeah,
right? Like then it can see the the post-its in the live one. It can see the people. It can probably
mm,
learn to take you know body language cues. But like this is gonna take time, right? But I
yeah,
imagine that you really will need to
yeah,
give the AI like the same kind of inputs
mm,
that we have in order to
yeah,
Yeah.
be able to simulate human behavior if that's what we want out of it. Uh,
I mean, all of this that we're working on, when we're building software and tools now, it's just a precursor for robots, to be honest. Like all the building blocks are there, vision capabilities are there, and then you add in ability to understand and navigate three-dimensional space. It's we're going to look back and say, oh, was that what we were building for, and we realized that the killer use case, which no one ever discovered yet for augmented
mm,
reality, was actually having virtual co-worker intermixed with robots. That's the killer use case. That's the best use case I can think of. So it's all just ramping up and building up to this, and when we look back, it's like, oh, was that what we were building? Was that what the building blocks were for? Was that the vision capabilities were for? Was that what the reasoning was for?
mm. and and also conversely, we could also be building for enterprise VR. Like you could have AI physically manifest in an Android sitting at the table, but you could also have humans project into VR and interfacing there with both AI and other humans.
Yeah, that's actually pretty
Yeah,
interesting. Like, if you just think, I think like, just taking VR aside,
yeah,
like AR, right? If I can have my little ghost buddies here, right? In my, I have my Meta new AR glasses, right?
yeah,
And I have my little, I have like, maybe I have a robot helping me out physically, but I can also like call
yeah,
upon my
Yep.
yeah,
my like virtual robots, my virtual agents at any point, and they're so like they're actually. I mean, I know they're not there, but like they are there enough. Like, I mean, you're probably these glasses are probably going to learn to direct sound. So like, if I see it there and it speaks, I see it and I hear it from that direction. And when we have like this shared opportunity for AR,
Definitely.
then there's actually like that virtual robot in the room,
yeah.
so to say. So a lot of these things are going to blend. I really agree with that. It's going to blend a lot.
It's gonna blend. Yeah, and it's gonna be the reason it's gonna be like that is
Mm,
also from a cost perspective. You will be, how many humanoid robots would you need in a room? Like those are gonna be more costly, and then we can bring in infinite number of virtual characters, and that's gonna cost nothing. And for the virtual characters to be really proficient, they would
mm,
also like to have a sense of the room. No problem. They'll just borrow the capabilities of the robot in the room that has smell, maybe. It has, like you said,
mm.
able to work with 3D sound and everything. So that's where we're heading. How long it's going to take, I don't know, but it's just all going to come together probably in that way.
Awesome. So this is this podcast in a nutshell, I think, where we start with something super concrete and AI in the enterprise, and then we spin off into AI robots in VR space, and I think that's just an excellent thing to be part of. Um,
That escalated fast. You know, we
yeah,
didn't stick with the AI like we did a
uh,
little bit, right? But we that but I think that it is relevant to lift the gaze like that.
yes,
I don't
I
know. Do you
think
have
so
any
too.
like Elia? Do you have any like? Do you if we just like look at the conversation so far, like do you have any like because we try to keep these like relatively brief, you know? Um,
Yeah,
or do you have any last things that you want to add, like just from the conversation today, either within like something we actually
yeah,
think is worth mentioning within AI in the enterprise, or regarding this more forward-looking things
yeah,
we ended on?
yeah. I will give you three.
Go for it.
Okay. The first one, if we're talking AI and enterprise, which is reality I'm working with, is that when you start to bring in AI colleagues and AI coworkers, you become so near to what is precious in the company, which is their own data. So one trend that I think could be worthy for you guys to talk about more in future episodes is if when we get this near to what is dear to companies, can we really have can we really provide a sauce in that way? So I'm finding is, my for my customers, I deliver SWAVA so that they can run it in their own
Mm,
cloud, and that's just a general because of a necessity. It's not possible for the companies that I'm working with to run it in my cloud. So and that's maybe a trend. That maybe it's just a consequence of the nature of the data that we need to get unlock the value that we can get from this. That's one thing I want to leave for in the conversation. The second thing is something I thought about a lot this morning when I was looking through, Medium and YouTube and the regular, the flow, there is we talk so much about intelligence, and it started to strike me coming onto this podcast that we should start to talk also, I think, about wisdom, because there's so many people that are basically in an echo chamber and echoing whatever AI news is coming out, and same thing, just trying the new shiny thing and doing basically a zero shot attempt at making something with O1, and it's amazing. Look, it works, right? But wisdom is comes from experience and comes over time. And I think we need to, when we start to think about AI and implementing AI in our organization, it's not just about augmenting the workforce with intelligence. Start to think about where the wisdom is going to come from,
mm,
because that's going to be super valuable. And the wisdom you're going to find in the humans that actually have been building and working with these things, whether it's building using technology or building with the social constructs and organizations. Those two building blocks is what I'm talking about. And the third thought I want to leave, because maybe you want to
mhm,
comment on some of this, is we long talked about the main thing in marketing has been is attention, like attention economy. We talk about like that's the main thing. And what I've been thinking a lot about lately is it's when you're looking at human AI collaboration. Yes, attention is important because we are not working 24/7. So their attention is important, and there's a limited bandwidth for how much we are able to, put our attention towards. But what is more important, I would say, in this collaboration is intent. Like intent is the main thing, because if you have infinite resources and you have as many AI coworkers as you want to, it's just up to your
mm.
imagination, basically. The main thing is not attention, because your attention is always going to be limited. It is what is the intention that you want to put all this amazing resources and power towards. That I think we should talk about more is
Awesome.
intention economy.
Thank you, Leah. Um, Profound insight to hear your thinking about how AI agents need to communicate with a different bandwidth than they do with humans. And in kindship, where I explore artificial consciousness through this system one and system two metaphor that humans have, like the thinking fast and slow um, paradigm. What I realized is just an extremely easy tweak to that paradigm where humans can interface with the system one of AIs, and then their subconscious or their deeper thinking in system two can be a shared subconscious among the AI agents, where with much higher text volumes being like put into a shared space, like or a chat between the AI agents, with humans being able to tap into that, but not interfacing with it as default.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, thanks a lot, Elia. And thanks to the listener
Yeah, thank you so
for
much,
sticking with us through our
Thank you.
exploration.
see you next week, Rasmus, at least.